Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. The Varietal Show is back. I am in Oregon, Willamette Valley, in fact, and you can see I'm wearing my big sweater because Willamette gets a little cold in the wintertime, and I'm with my great friend Adam Campbell, and we are at Elk Cove Winery. This is an amazing brand that was founded in 1974. Their first vintage was 1977, and Adam and I have been friends pretty much since we both got involved in the industry. It's been a long time. I've been following what's happening here in Willamette Valley. This is the 40-year anniversary, 2023, and of the appellation itself. And it's a big appellation. It's actually behind us on that big map up there. But you know, Adam's family is actually of the original families that came here. Let's just put it this way. A lot of them came from UC Davis. The original David Lett and Chuck Corey and these people all came from UC Davis. That's where I went to school. I take a little bit of pride in that they came up here to Oregon. It's smart. And I did live in Astoria, Oregon for 2.5 years when Goonies was filmed there, and Short Circuit and Kindergarten Cop. And when that was all happening, some others came up here, Sokol Blauser and Ponzi's and David Adelsheim, and these people came up here and started founding these wineries in the 70s. But your family was like the original family that were pear farmers in the Hood River area. This is crazy. What were your parents thinking about moving this direction towards the coast here and planting grapes?
Well, I think that, you know, they'd spent time in the Bay Area and had traveled quite a bit. And I think they just really realized that they wanted to do an agricultural farm like my grandfather, but they were just super passionate about wine. Yeah. And so there was just kind of the beginning discussions of maybe there was possibilities of a cool climate area to grow grapes here in the Willamette Valley. So they packed their bags and moved west and bought this old abandoned homestead here, yeah. Which again, yeah, we're on our almost 50th year this year. And going strong. Yeah,
next year will be your 50th, right?
Yep.
2024 will be the 50-year anniversary of Elk Cove brand. And a lot of you have seen Elk Cove wines out there. I mean, if you look at Willamette Valley and the Willamette Valley section of a great restaurant list, chances are you're going to find a little bit of Elk Cove. We all love these guys. I mean, like, Adam's just my buddy, and he's on my phone, and I can call him, and we hang out, and we have fun times. We've got a lot of things. But it's really the kind of the marks that you guys have made. You've learned a lot about this land, and these vintages have been all off the estate property. So this is a very big difference. If it says Willamette, that means you can get fruit from all over the place. And you've got friends here that are really great, and you've sourced some from other people who's just like great friendships. But this is now, you've really come to your own, where it's all about the estate. You control your own destiny, and you've got some really great wines that we're going to taste in just a second.
Yeah, we weren't able to be estate in the early days just because if we wanted to grow production, we basically relied on family friends that also owned vineyards. But I think it was really a special thing for my parents in particular when we realized, hey, you know, we've got 400 acres, we've got 6 different vineyard sites on the 3 main soil types in the Willamette Valley. We have all the ingredients that it takes to do an estate winery where we own the land, we farm the grapes, and we take it all the way to the finished product. We say from vine to bottle. We're responsible for it, and we like it that way.
Vine to bottle. Never forget that, you guys. Speaking of which, Pinot Gris. This is a great one that they've helped put on the map. You know, Pinot Gris, a little tidbit for you. When David Lett came here in the mid-1960s, and the first planting he did was right down near Corvallis, which is a little bit south of us, right where Oregon State University is. He planted not only Pinot Noir, but he also planted Pinot Gris. And that was a really big step in where we're at today. Pinot Gris, thanks to Elk Cove and King Estate and Adelsheim and Lang and all these kinds of brands, it's something that we drink today, and we don't. It is the same grape as Pinot Grigio. Let's not think it's not. But the fact is, it is made in Alsatian style. And when you look at Alsace, where it's at, it's kind of actually on the same, part of the globe that we are right here in Willamette. And it just works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to David Led. I mean, essentially those early plantings of Pinot Gris in Oregon were the first place in the New World outside of Europe that was growing Pinot Gris. And we started in a big way through the kind of mid-'80s planting. I love the fact that it's a fresh white wine. We stainless steel ferment it. It tastes like the grape. And we can, sell it in like nice restaurants, pour it by the glass. It might be people's first opportunity to taste a wine from Oregon.
Yeah.
So we're proud of it.
It's really amazing. So this is just, on the nose. Those peaches are just like, they're roaring out of here. And you're a pear family too, like back in the old days. It's got the pear note. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, definitely. And what we see with Pinot Gris is like, if we pick the grapes at the right possible time, we get that stone fruit character, pear, some apple. If you pick the grapes when they're too ripe, they go kind of tropical and less interesting.
Yeah.
If you pick them too early, they're just about citrus. And if we can get it in that middle track, we get stone fruit, we get richness, but we also get freshness.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is fantastic. And I've been a big fan of this, and I just think I thank Oregon and Willamette Valley for putting this on the map, to be really honest. It's a funny thing. I talked with Miss Don Lang yesterday, and he said, the problem, Chris, that we were having was that a lot of people couldn't even pronounce Oregon. They were going, Oregon, like things like this. And like at one point, they went to New York City, and they started going, would you like to taste our wines? They're all, oh yeah, the sommeliers started going, oh yeah. Where's that from in Willamette Valley? Do you have any clones? Do you have, the education that has kind of gone on as a group here has been amazing. Your camaraderie with others, it's helped build this brand of Oregon wines, and not just Willamette, but Oregon wines, and putting it on the map and having people pronounce it right. Hello. But Willamette's gone so far. Since you started here, what are some of the steps? Like, is there like a point where you're like, oh man, that was like crazy what just happened, or some success that you've had?
Yeah, even when I started back with my family full time, obviously I grew up working here, helping my parents. My dad was the winemaker for the first 20 years, and it was all hands on deck. But I love the fact that and through that kind of early 90s up into the late 90s, things really changed. And I think some of it is that Oregon really focused on working together, supporting our peers, and then working on telling our story to other storytellers, yourself included, but also sommeliers, wine buyers at really good restaurants. At this point, folks from the media, not just in the U.S. but around the world. And if we can tell our story to other storytellers and hope that they'll tell that story beyond us, we don't have massive marketing budgets, so this is how we're going to get the word out about what we do and what we love to do.
Yeah, and it's worked, you guys, and that's why I'm here again. I come back at least once a year. Like I said, I do have a connection here in Astoria, Oregon. Love Astoria, and please do watch. I do like the Goonies. It's good, and yeah, those buildings are still there. But actually, Kindergarten Cop actually talks about Astoria often, and I give Arnold Schwarzenegger some credit for that. Moving on to great Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir is one of the trademarks grapes of this area. There's no doubt about it. We've all discovered Pinot Noir and have learned so much about it because of what's happened here in Willamette Valley. It's not just us. It's also the people from Burgundy who really fell in love with this area too, have invested in here. And this is like the late 80s when we really had a big brand, the Durin family, so Domaine Durin, and as we call it, DDO, Domaine Durin, Oregon. DDO. And they came here, and it kind of happens like this in different areas where there is some investment by the French in these areas because they start believing in them 100%. And this is a very interesting place. If you look where Willamette Valley is on the map, on the globe, it actually kind of goes exactly around the globe to exactly where Burgundy is located. So there's something very, very similar here. The interesting thing is the soils are different here. And they see it, they understand that, and we understand what they have, we'll never have here on this West Coast. But we have unique soil types, don't we? And what's in this one? This is the Estate Pinot Noir, you guys. This is the new 2021 vintage, and it's tasting great. So.
Yeah, though this is basically a taste of the cellar. 80 to 85% of the Pinot Noir, Estate Pinot Noir that I produce goes into this wine, and it's got, you know, elements from vineyards that I own on marine sediment soils. A lot of that dark fruit character comes from that. Laurelwood soils, which have this really great spiciness, as well as the Jory or volcanic soils, which gives this lifted red fruit character. So they all kind of come together with this wine here. Again, it's often people's first experience with a Elk Cove wine would be either the Pinot Gris or this Pinot Noir.
Absolutely.
And as we get farther away from Oregon as a base, and certainly when, you know, we sell in about 20 export markets around the world, it's really primarily about Pinot Noir. When they think of Oregon and Willamette Valley, they think Pinot Noir, which is just fine by us.
And with me too. Pinot Noir is a grape that is very thin-skinned, needs to be in cool climate conditions. The biggest thing about Oregon, Willamette Valley here, and the difference between where I grew up and the other part of where I grew up in Russian River Valley. Russian River Valley, we have plenty of sun. We're budding. The buds are coming out a month before they come out here. And it's because they're still dormant, they're still resting, it's still cold and wintry here when we're getting into spring and we're getting warm there. And it is because of that that we do have certain clones like the Dijon clones that came into University of Oregon State University here. And it's because of that to speed up the process of ripening. But we had these older clones that were already planted here that we were learning from. That's the Pommard clone and the 2A, which is called Wädenswil, which is a Swiss clone. And they were becoming successful with these things. And so now there's a whole plethora of different flavors that are being explored in these different zones. And everything is inside this glass, basically, that I just talked about. I mean, we've got different clones, we've got different sites, but they're estate. And that's the most important thing here, is that these are ones that you've worked on to develop. And there's things that, you know, some of these vines actually are being pulled out because they were own-rooted. This was something that was done here. And now we have all these kinds of specialty root, you know, grape roots that we put down first. And now we've learned so much since, you know, the 1970s when this was really being super developed, and when 1983 rolled around. But this is everything inside of a glass.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that, you know, and I think it's one of the things that really helped Oregon in those early days is starting with really good plant material to begin with. And probably, you know, Pommard is the best example of that. This wine is still 60% Pommard clone. When we plant new vineyards, we're still planting at least half Wädenswil and Pommard from our own cuttings off our own vineyards, because I think at the end of the day, they're really good quality clones that give plenty of fruit qualities, but also earthiness and spiciness and great length on the palate. And I just think that we're fortunate we started with some good plant material. And when people think of Oregon and they think of an Oregon wine, they're really thinking about Pommard clone in particular.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to take a, when you see this on lists coming up here, you're going to see Elk Cove and you're going to see Pinot Noir, Willamette Valley. But you got to look at one thing there, estate. And that's what's different than ever before, is that these are estate. They're all grown by the family. They're all grown in these special conditions. You've learned so much about them. And you do have you control your own destiny when you own your own vineyard. And I want to say, you know, it's like the same thing in Sonoma County, Napa, Santa Barbara, wherever, up in Walla Walla. If you don't own your own estate vineyards now, and popularity of wine is there, people might sell their vineyards. And then you lose that fruit. You lose that relationship that you had because they're selling. And having your own, controlling your own destiny is really important now.
Yeah, and we love the fact that we, through our farming our 400 acres, we have our own vineyard crew that, guys and gals that I've worked with, some up to 20 years here on the property, and they have so much pride in what they do. They just do an amazing vineyard job. And then we're also able to, because we have a value-added product, there's a little more ability for us to, we provide living wage, healthcare, PTO, 401k for not just our production workers and sales force, but for guys and gals that work for us in the vineyard. And we're super proud of that. When people think about, how to support businesses that are doing the right thing, we want to be able to tell that story. And a big part of that is being a state.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So the next wine we're going to taste, well, let me just, before we go too far, this is the classic, that last one is the classic, the Estate Pinot Noir. It's the classic salmon pairing. Here we are. It's Oregon, you guys. They fish here. Lewis and Clark came out to the ocean here on the Columbia River. It's loaded with fish. And so you start going, in the old days, home ec teachers would tell you, white wines go with fish, and that's it, basically. But they never had Pinot like this. And so that's the difference that we were going into. And believe me, International Pinot Noir Celebration, which I always love going to, it's an amazing phenomenon that happened here in Oregon, and it's at Linfield College. And those great people that really are the producers that you get to see, not only from Oregon and Willamette Valley, but also California and Burgundy. We do a big salmon roast, and man, that salmon roast and that wine right there would be like money. It's like what I would want, and it is that signature kind of style that is very Oregonian. And I did say it, Oregonian. And I did pronounce it right as well. Speaking of pronouncing right, Five Mountains, this is an amazing vineyard. This is something that really goes back into the heritage of what we're doing here in Willamette Valley. Laurelwood is, this is Laurelwood District. That's a newer AVA or appellation here in the Willamette Valley. Willamette Valley was it wasn't the first to cross county lines, but it was the biggest by far. It was five counties in the original layout. That cross the lines of those. Most are within a county, because you could put a county on the actual label before appellations were invented. So like you could just say Sonoma County, Napa County, some county up here, Washington County. You could put that on there. But getting it very finite and saying Willamette Valley, this is actually a valley that was actually carved out by the Missoula floods. And these are glaciers that came down here and cut through this soil and created these helped create these mountains. And before this whole thing started in the 60s here, it was really well known for basically farming. And a lot of the turf that you guys play on in golf courses comes from here. And hazelnuts that you eat come from here, and blueberries and all sorts of things. It's crazy, but this is all on the hillsides that we're talking about. And Laurelwood is a hillside that actually kind of looks at Portland. It's up there on that side. And this tell us a little bit about this vineyard, because this goes way back.
Yeah, so it's a historic vineyard planted in 1978. Dick Ponzi was really instrumental in planting it, but the Ponzi family didn't own it. And so it kind of went through other owners. But a lot of the early Ponzi Reserve wines, they even made a single vineyard wine in 1982, I believe, from Five Mountain. But it was a vineyard that we ended up leasing and becoming good buddies with the owners. And when they're ready to sell, they said, we don't want to sell it to anybody but you. So we made it happen. And I love the fact that, here we have a historic vineyard, Pomard clone, almost as old as our Elk Cove Estate Vineyards. And yet I was able to kind of come in after it had been in the ground for 20, 30 years and really make it our own. We've planted new vineyards there, but this single vineyard comes from that special 4.5 acre block of Pommard that Dick planted in the 70s.
It's amazing. I mean, these families, the Campbells, you know, Adam and his family, they've really been, you know, revolutionaries here. The potential was here, just we didn't have the grapes to do it. I mean, Pinot Noir was not anything of note until really the 60s. I mean, there were some good plantings in California, but exploring up here, it's very different. Southern Oregon, it gets warm. It's like California temperatures. Up here, it's a little, you know, there's a reason that there's a lot of cows and why you have Tillamook cheese, you guys. Just think about that. And it's because the cows, there's tons of land here for the cows. And there's tons of land for these other things to grow. And there's tons of seaside and there's tons of big rivers and everything that we think about with Oregon. When we think about the actual grape of Oregon, we've realized that really what we can do here is Pinot Noir. And this is like way ahead of its time. I mean, this is crazy. And I'm glad. When did you start actually doing this designate?
I guess when we purchased it in 04 would have been our first vintage with it. And we love that it's so different from our marine sediment soils that we have like here and over at our Mount Richmond or Goodrich properties. And I love that it's, you know, with the old vines, it's got that great length on the palate. It's got great fruit, but also really good freshness. And, you know, I guess when I think about, you know, why folks essentially chose to be up here and move north to it's basically a searching out of how to grow grapes on the climactic edge, coolest climate possible, and still get them ripe. Yeah. That means, you know, even in 2021, which is a warmer vintage, we still pick these own-rooted old vine Pinot Noir in late October after it's been 110, 120 days, bloom to harvest. That's how you get that much freshness with that much richness.
It's amazing. And these wines are amazing, you guys. This is really complex. It's got layers of complexity. Old vines matter, like hashtag old vines matter. And this is still own-rooted. So this is like a real historical vineyard. And there's a few here in Oregon, and it's before all these things came in. The Pommard clone came from California. It actually came through Dr. Olmo at UC Davis, and this is like traced back to 1951. And we know exactly the vineyard in Burgundy that it came from. But when it's planted here in Oregon soils, it's different than California soils. And these are the things that, I mean, Dick Ponzi was a forethinker of a lot of the future of us. And you guys, tell us a little bit about the other vineyard designates that you do and why they're so separate from one another.
Yeah, a number of them are on these marine sediment soils. When I look for single vineyard opportunities, again, we own 6 different vineyards on these different soil types and different vine age. But to me, like, they can't just be a really good wine. It has to tell a story, right? Yeah. And I think each of the ones tell a unique story. And, you know, ones like La Boheme, we've been making since the 80s. And that's marine sediment soils, maybe like a sister wine to this one and similar vine age. But our Mount Richmond vineyard, which is our largest vineyard, we've got we can pick and choose where we get those grapes from on that vineyard, but we have vines back to the mid 90s over there. Yeah, and it's amazing. Yeah, I love that we've also been able to, not just with Five Mountain, but also we have a vineyard called Wind Hill, Clay Court, and Goodrich were all planted vineyards that we bought from other people. Yeah, and when their time was done growing grapes, I feel honored that they wanted to sell their vineyards to us, and we can utilize them in our estate Pinot Gris and Pinot Noir, but also if there's an opportunity, we will make single vineyard wines for those.
Well, I'm very impressed by these new releases. You know, the 2021 was a very good one, very showy. 2022, like the Pinot Gris there, you know what? They got hit by frost, and you know what? The grapes came back, and that's an amazing thing about this area, and about the, you know, the stamina of these grapes and the vines themselves, and how you just want to hug these vines up here. You know, like they have really weathered the storm, and they do. And I mean, it rains here earlier than it rains in California, believe me, he and I can tell you, July is the craziest hot weather period you'll ever come across when we go to the IPNC and you just want beer and Riesling because it's just so hot. And you're like, oh, how do the Pinot vines survive all this stuff? But they do. And that's the magic of Oregon. And I think that really what we're tasting here is Oregon in a glass. And I feel like the Campbells have done such a great job for that. And this Elk Cove brand is one of my favorites. I will say that right out loud. And it's just because I've been following you since the beginning. You and I have known each other forever, but we sure like drinking these great wines together. And I hope you guys will check them out, the Elk Cove website, and come here and visit. This is in the little town of Gaston, or if you want to be Frenchy about it, Gaston, you know, but it's not really that French. It's actually really Oregonian, and that's cool. So thank you for having me once again.
Cheers.
Adam.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And drink more Oregonian wines and drink more Willamette Valley and Elk Cove. Cheers, you guys.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.